Picture this: a vast desert landscape with a tribe of nomads wandering under the blistering sun, guided by the stars at night. Among them, a powerful leader stands tall, surrounded by several wives and numerous children. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel or an ancient myth. It's a glimpse into the lives of some of the most prominent figures in the Bible. The idea of marriage with multiple women, or polygamy, is an uncomfortable topic for many today. Yet, in the pages of the Bible, it was a practice observed by men of great faith, like Abraham, Jacob, David, and Solomon. But why did God allow marriage with multiple women in the Bible? Was it a divine mandate or a cultural concession? What lessons can we draw from these ancient stories, and how do they apply to our understanding of marriage today? Let's delve into this intriguing question, exploring the cultural, theological, and social dimensions of biblical polygamy. We'll look at what the Bible says, the historical context, and the implications for modern believers. Before we dive deeper, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss any of our explorations into the mystical and profound teachings of the Bible. To understand why God allowed polygamy in the Bible, we first need to step into the ancient world and view marriage from the perspective of biblical times. The concept of marriage then was vastly different from what it is today. In those days, marriage wasn't just about love and companionship. It was a social and economic arrangement crucial for survival and continuity. The role of marriage in society. In ancient Israel, marriage served several vital functions. It was a way to forge alliances between families, tribes, and nations. These alliances were critical for mutual protection, trade, and political power. Having multiple wives often meant having more connections, which could translate into greater wealth and influence. Population growth and survival. Life in ancient times was harsh, with high mortality rates due to war, disease, and famine. To ensure the survival of their lineage, men often married multiple women to have more children. More children meant more hands to work the land, and more warriors to protect the community. Women's status and security. Women in biblical times had limited rights and opportunities. They were often dependent on their fathers or husbands for economic security. In such a patriarchal society, polygamy provided a way for women, especially widows and orphans, to find a place in society and secure their future. Biblical polygamy. Key figures and stories. Several prominent figures in the Bible had multiple wives, and their stories provide insights into the complexities of polygamous relationships. Let's explore a few of these stories and what they reveal. Abraham and his wives, Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. Abraham, the patriarch of Israel, is perhaps one of the most notable examples. He had multiple wives, including Sarah, Hagar, and later, Keturah. The story of Hagar and Sarah is particularly poignant, as it highlights the tensions and complications of polygamy. Sarah, unable to bear children, gave her maidservant Hagar to Abraham to produce an heir. However, once Hagar conceived, jealousy and strife ensued, leading to Hagar's mistreatment and eventual departure. Jacob and his wives, Leah and Rachel. Jacob's story is another classic example of biblical polygamy. He married two sisters, Leah and Rachel, and also had children with their maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah. The intense rivalry between Leah and Rachel over Jacob's affection and the birth of children led to a complex family dynamic full of competition and conflict. David and his many wives. King David, known as a man after God's own heart, had multiple wives, including Michal, Abigail, and Bathsheba. His relationships were not without turmoil, as seen in the tragic story of Bathsheba. David's desire for her led to adultery and the arranged death of her husband Uriah. This incident brought severe consequences and highlighted the moral complexities of polygamy. Solomon and his 700 wives and 300 concubines. Solomon, David's son, is famously known for having 700 wives and 300 concubines. While his marriages were often politically motivated, aimed at securing alliances with other nations, they also led to his spiritual downfall. The Bible records that his foreign wives turned his heart away from God, leading him to idolatry. Is this God's will or human concession? One of the most debated aspects of biblical polygamy is whether it was God's will or a human concession. Did God endorse polygamy, or was it a practice he allowed due to the hardness of human hearts? The creation ideal, monogamy. At the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, we see the ideal model of marriage, one man and one woman. Adam and Eve were created as a pair, and their union was described as one flesh. Genesis 2:24. This suggests that God's original design for marriage was monogamous. The Law of Moses, regulations on polygamy. While the Mosaic Law does not explicitly prohibit polygamy, it does set regulations to protect the rights of all parties involved. For instance, Deuteronomy 21:15-17 provides guidelines for inheritance rights among the children of multiple wives. The law also emphasizes fairness and prohibits favoritism, showing a concern for justice even within the context of polygamous relationships. Prophetic critique and New Testament teachings. In the Old Testament, the prophets often critiqued the moral failings associated with polygamy, especially when it led to idolatry and injustice. In the New Testament, the emphasis shifts more clearly towards monogamy. Jesus, when questioned about divorce, pointed back to the creation ideal, affirming that marriage was intended to be between one man and one woman, Matthew 19:4-6. Additionally, the qualifications for church leaders in the pastoral epistles emphasize being the husband of one wife, 1 Timothy 3:2, Titus 1-6, further indicating a preference for monogamy. The human element, challenges and consequences. Polygamy in the Bible was not without its challenges and consequences. The stories of polygamous marriages often reflect human flaws, jealousy, and the struggle for power and affection. Jealousy and strife. Many biblical accounts of polygamy highlight the jealousy and rivalry between co-wives. Sarah's jealousy of Hagar, Rachel and Leah's competition for Jacob's love, and the discord among David's wives are all examples of the emotional and relational turmoil that often accompanied these relationships. Inequality and injustice. Polygamy also often led to inequality and injustice. The preferential treatment of certain wives or children could lead to resentment and conflict. For example, Joseph's brothers were jealous of him because he was Jacob's favorite son, born to his favorite wife, Rachel. This favoritism nearly led to Joseph's death and caused great suffering in the family. Spiritual consequences. The most profound consequence of polygamy in the Bible was often spiritual. Solomon's many wives led him away from God, as they introduced him to the worship of other gods. This deviation had serious repercussions for his kingdom and his relationship with God. While polygamy is present in the Bible, it is not the central focus of biblical teaching on marriage. Instead, the broader biblical narrative highlights the idea of covenant faithfulness and the ideal of monogamous, loving relationships. Throughout the Bible, the relationship between God and his people is often compared to a marriage. This metaphor emphasizes the importance of faithfulness, love, and commitment. The prophets, for instance, frequently use the imagery of marriage to describe Israel's unfaithfulness to God and God's enduring love for his people. The New Covenant and marriage. In the New Testament, marriage is further elevated as a symbol of the relationship between Christ and the Church. The Apostle Paul describes this relationship in Ephesians 5:25-33, where he urges husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the Church. This passage underscores the ideal of self-sacrificial love and mutual respect in marriage, reflecting the unity and exclusivity of the Christ-Church relationship. The question of why God allowed marriage with multiple women in the Bible is complex and multifaceted. It involves understanding the cultural and historical context, the theological teachings, and the human experiences reflected in the biblical narratives. While polygamy was a reality for many biblical figures, it was not the ultimate ideal. The broader biblical narrative points towards a vision of marriage marked by love, faithfulness, and mutual respect. ideals that transcend time and culture. As we explore these ancient stories, we are reminded of the enduring relevance of the Bible's teachings and the richness of its moral and spiritual insights. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to continue the conversation and spread these profound lessons. Until next time, keep exploring the depths of the Bible with us.